or struggling internally, they need our help. They have given us so much for us to live in this country. I like to take this time to encourage kids my own age to help me volunteer for veterans and fundraise for the wounded warriors. It's important to study and get good grades and to participate in sports, but we need this most. We need to spread our love because with people, we need to spread our love because without these people, we couldn't be free. It feels so good to help them. They need us. This project honors and empowers wounded warriors by helping them and their families be successful, well-adjusted generation of the wounded service members. I'd be so happy to see my friends my own age help me out. Thank you, Mr. Gordon, for this honor and for your service to our country. I appreciate it. I'll treasure this memory of this flag always. I promise you today, and I promise all the wounded warriors and veterans to pay this forward and never stop trying to help you as long as I live.
Thank you, Carol. Jackie.
Thank you.
We put your mic over here now. No, you're going to have to do from over here. I don't know what's wrong with the second mic.
That's all right. Mr. Mayor, we had a mix-up, and it's all my fault. We're going to do, if it's okay with you, Percy Ward's resolution at your next meeting, if that's okay?
Okay? Yeah, that's fine.
Okay?
All right? Okay. Well, then I'll need you to stay there for a second.
Did you, okay.
The city of Poquoson always appreciates the service of our former mayor and one of my mentors here, and Gordon Hessel. And he's announced his intention to retire from the House of Delegates. And so the city wanted to reach out and not just have you celebrate our citizens, but to also celebrate you as well. So the council has snuck something on the agenda so that you would not be aware of what you were walking into, and that we wanted to recognize you as the delegate. And I'll read this if I might. And this is a recognition in honor of Gordon C. Hessel, Jr., delegate of the 91st District of the General Assembly. And whereas Delegate Gordon C. Hessel was elected to represent the 91st District of the Virginia General Assembly, House of Representatives in 2011, and included the city of Poquoson. Whereas Delegate Gordon C. Hessel, a Poquoson High School graduate, served the city of Poquoson as a member of the Poquoson Volunteer Fire Department and with the Poquoson City Council from 1982 until 2011, including 15 years as mayor. And whereas under Delegate Gordon C. Hessel's leadership in the General Assembly over the course of 9 sessions, he again served the city of Poquoson by his positions on improving schools, enhancing special education programs, successfully securing state funds to help Hampton buy land around the Langley Air Force Base, creating the kind of safe operating area the military needs, and raising awareness of the impacts of flooding, as well as numerous other accomplishments. And whereas Gordon served the watermen of the Commonwealth by introduction of several bills which pertain to various commercial fishing regulations, and whereas Delegate Hessel, through his concern, passion, and impact on the House Education Committee, became the Virginia Education Association's 2018 Legislator of the Year. Now, therefore, we, the members of Poquoson City Council, do hereby recognize Delegate Gordon C. Hessel for his outstanding leadership, professionalism, and representing the city of Poquoson through the 91st District of the Virginia General Assembly, House of Representatives, and wish for him and his family many years of enjoyable and rewarding retirement. Thank you very much.
Gee, thank you so
Okay.
much. I am dumbfounded. I certainly wasn't expecting this. I'm very humble,
No.
and I thank you so much.
Okay.
I really do.
Well, we appreciate everything that you've done for us. I will tell you 2 things that are most noteworthy, and I see our school superintendent in the back. Our budgets are much easier because of the service that you've given us. And I will tell everybody that I just handed a letter to the city manager concerning environmental impact of moving yet again more fighters to the Langley Air Force Base. And I think both of those play right to what you've done for us.
Thank you, Gene.
All right?
Thank
So
you
thank
so
you
much.
very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Wow. Not too often do I get something like that snuck in, but that surely was. But I am very humbled, and I thank each of you very much. It has been, without a doubt, probably one of the, well, certainly one of the most enjoyable things that I've tried to do as it relates to politics in the House of Delegates. It's a lot of work. It's not a 9-to-5 job. What you find out very quickly is that relationships is what causes you success in any situation that you get involved in the General Assembly. And I'll be covering some of that and some of the relationships that I've had and still have, and hopefully will have, as long as I live. Let me just touch on, I'm just going to touch on a couple of things. What I do now, leave my glasses at home. Oh, here they are. I left Mary Martha's resolution at home, so I had to run home and get that. Let me talk about judges for just a second. Very briefly, we have had, when I say we, I'm talking about the folks that worked in my office who did 99% of the work, to include Councilman Cannella. Without them, things don't work. They always had things to me on time. They always had good advice, advice that I appreciated, and we had the real privilege of being able to confirm 3 judges, one in York County and 2 in the city of Hampton. As I understand it now, I think our judgeships are in good shape in terms of filling those positions. We have one that will take office, I want to say, mid-June in the city of Hampton. So I think we're in good shape with judges. That is probably one of the more important aspects of what we do there is the budget and judges, to be honest with you. So anyway, I'm very pleased with that. We did have a request from the Hampton City School System their request was $555,900, and if you're familiar with their academies there, Councilman Green, I know is, they actually have kids returning to school who have quit school. And attending these academies, it's a far range of opportunities for these young people. And it's working very well, and again, because of a relationship with some of the folks on appropriations. I barely got it out of my mouth, quite frankly, at the meeting with those folks before they told me they didn't want to hear anymore. But they did approve the $555,900 for the city of Hampton, and they will get that somewhere July, August. Briefly about Waterman, last year we had several bills that we were able again to get through the House and the Senate. One of those bills completely, the bill that was brought by a senator from Newport News, what it did really was it did away with all crab pots, as you and I know, crab pots. And a brand new crab pot that would be put into service at probably 4 times the cost of what Waterman put into a crab pot today. I didn't see it coming. I didn't know it was coming. So what we did was sit down and we sent a letter to every member of the House, every member of the Senate, explaining to them what I think they didn't know about crab pots, quite frankly. That bill died in committee, so we didn't have to worry about that one anymore. House Bill 1573, what it said was, very simply, that you cannot take if you take a waterman's license for one fishery, you cannot take all of their license away from them. That's what was happening. If you got a ticket in the fishery of crabbing, then that meant that you could lose all of your license. Most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But thanks to the help of a lot of watermen and a lot of people that support watermen, we came up with a bill, and it sailed through the House and the Senate. The only person who objected to this particular bill was the governor. And I quickly sent him a note to let him know that his efforts to sink this particular bill was a cheap shot, quite frankly, and that's what it was. Never heard back from him. That's immaterial, but bottom line is the watermen will continue to do what they're doing, the way they've been doing it, and in some manner left alone to some extent. House Bill 1572 now allows the owner of a license of a waterman. A waterman who has a waterman's card can now pass his license on either to a employee that may have worked on his boat or a family member. Prior to the bill, you couldn't do that. So these are such simple things. And fortunately for us, folks that had to vote on these things realize that. I know Dr. Parrish is here tonight and council. I'm not going to go through all of the information about the school system because quite frankly, I know that you're aware of most of it. Let me just say that I think we had a good year. I think we had a good year in terms of education. Some of the things you may not have heard was that the state is moving towards and has appropriated money to try to lessen the impact on folks that are going to college. Try to reduce those fees that they have to pay, and they have put an additional $84 million in the budget to try to take care of some of those things. I know a strong message went out to the universities and colleges. We control your purse strings, and probably what you're charging these students may be getting a little bit out of hand, and so hopefully this budget resolves that. That's what we hope, and that's what I think will happen. The one bill that I've been called about more than any bill, not only from this community, but all over the 91st District, is the abortion bill. I voted against it, of course, but I need to tell you that in voting against that bill, quite frankly, I didn't understand the bill when I read it. I'm not a physician, and I didn't understand the technicalities that were there. So I asked the college, the medical college, if they would either let me come there or would they send over to our building someone who could explain this bill to me and tell me about the trimesters and tell me, what does this mean? And they did. They sent two OBGYN doctors over to my office, and basically, here's what they said. With the bill written the way that it is, the doctor just kind of put his hand on his chest and he said, I'm sitting down. I have on whatever it is they wear when they deliver babies. I'm ready for this child to be born. So I'm in the hospital. I'm prepared to deliver this child. So what happens when I deliver this child? The child is placed over here, is cleaned and whatever else they do with a newborn baby. And then not all children, all parents, but some parents, we're going to be over here in a conference deciding what we're going to do with this child. If that makes any sense to anybody in the whole world, I don't want to be around them. And so, it died in committee, but it's something that we're going to see. We're going to continue to see it. This is not the last time you're going to see this bill. And what's troubling about it is that folks elected these people to bring bills like that to the General Assembly. And that's really a shame. Lastly, let me talk about Langley Air Force Base. What I can tell you about Langley Air Force Base that you may not know is we're done. They have all of the land that they wanted to get. And as the mayor mentioned, they do have another squadron heading that way. The encroachment is not to the point where the Secretary of the Air Force, the Undersecretary of the Air Force, she does not believe that Langley will ever have another issue. She can't tell you that BRAC may not come again, but she also says that because this land has been purchased, she doesn't see any issues coming to Langley Air Force Base, which is good news for all of us. So that pretty much, Mr. Mayor and members of council, takes care of just a real tip of the iceberg of what was going on in the General Assembly in this last session. I'm very proud to have been able to represent you, City of Hampton and York County. It's been quite a ride, quite frankly. It's been quite a ride. But whoever takes my place, I certainly hope that they will go into that job and try to make the relationships that you need to have to get anything done. If you think you're, the smartest person in the world, or somebody's patting you on the back and telling you the greatest delegate in the world, and you don't have any relationships in the General Assembly, you'll come back empty every year. You have to convince the committees of what your need is or what your want is. But you don't just walk in there and say, hey, I need $1 million for a piece of land at Langley Field, and they approve it. It doesn't work that way. So hopefully we have covered the bases that we wanted to cover. I think we've done the things that we wanted to do. Those of you on this council that have called me, to include Wayne, that have called me with your comments, man, all of that's been helpful. All of that's been helpful. The other thing is you have to listen. You have to listen to what people are telling you. I don't always have the right answer. There's some votes I'd like to have back, but I'll never get them back, and it is what it is. But hopefully we did the job that the district wanted us to do. Hopefully we will have brought a little something to the General Assembly that'll stick. The relationships there that I've made, man, they're just everlasting. And when you get in that position, it's not that it's easy, but it sure is a whole lot easier to try to work with folks when you've got people that will bail you out. And I will tell you this, because their names deserve to be spoken tonight, and that is Delegate Barry Knight, who's in Virginia Beach, and Dr. Chris Stolley, who were extremely helpful with the Langley Air Force Base money. They both serve on appropriations, different committees, but all on appropriations. They have been doing Fentress and Oceana for a good number of years, so they kind of walked me through the process. Had it not been for them, I wouldn't even known there was a process. So anyway, Mr. Mayor, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this. Touches my heart, it really does, and I appreciate it so much.
Thank you very much. All right, the next item on our agenda here this evening is an audience for visitors. We do have 2 public hearings tonight, so if you're here to talk about one of those public hearings, please refrain, although I don't think we'll have any speakers on those either. But is anybody that would like to address council on any issue? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the audience for visitors and ask council for approval of the minutes. And I would note that I believe, Evie, that there's one set that's amended. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you're prepared, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the minutes of our regular session of April 22nd, 2019 as amended, and the amendment was just to correct the expiration date for James C. Owens on the wetlands port.
Second.
Okay, motion made and second. We approve the regular session minutes. Evie, please.
Certainly. Vice Mayor Freeman. Councilwoman Andrews.
Abstain.
Councilman Southall.
Aye.
Councilman Canella.
Aye.
Councilman Hucks.
Aye.
Councilman Green.
Aye.
Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 6-0 with one abstention.
In the work session of the same evening?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve our minutes of the work session of the same evening.
Second.
Okay, motion made and second. We approve those also. Evie, please.
Certainly. Councilwoman Andrews.
Abstain.
Councilman Canella.
Aye.
Councilman Southall.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman. Councilman Hucks.
Aye.
Councilman Green.
Aye.
Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 6-0 with one abstention.
Okay, thank you very much. Two public hearings. First is an amendment to Article 3, non-conforming uses and structures, dealing with Sections 3 or dash 6.3 of the zoning ordinance to clarify fire-rated material requirements and apply them consistently across the 3 single-family zoning districts.
Thank you. I'm not sure I'm going to meet the standards that have been set earlier tonight, but I'll do my best. It's more of a mundane subject, but an important one. In 2012, staff was tasked with creating an ordinance that would provide allowances for side setbacks on non-conforming lots. It was one of the main variance requests that we were getting, and anytime you're basically approving a variance, every time it comes up, that's a sure sign that you need to change the zoning ordinance, which is what we did back in 2012. In so doing, somewhat inadvertently, but we ended up imposing a higher standard on the properties in the RS zoning district by virtue of the fact that they require a greater setback. So even though this is a unified, Virginia Unified Statewide Building Code provision, it was carried through in the zoning ordinance. So we wanted to basically get consistency across the 3 zoning districts. Really what the building code says is that if you're under 15 feet, you've got to have extra fire protection. The way it was working out is that properties in RS that may be 19 feet away, we're basically getting an extra 4 or 5 feet, 4 feet of a fire requirement, which really didn't seem to make any sense. So what this ordinance is doing is just codifying a provision that really makes all the residential zone properties equal in that regard. The change would be the exterior portion of any primary structure that will be located less than 15 feet from the side property line through this provision must be constructed using 2-hour rated fire materials, excluding doors and windows as defined by the Virginia Uniform Statewide Building Code. So basically, we have the same requirement for all residential zone properties. This is a clarification. I mean, it's obviously an amendment, but it certainly will clarify things, and will basically equalize, as I've already said, the provisions across the districts, the residential districts. The Planning Commission did vote after their public hearing to recommend approval to the City Council of the proposed amendment. It's staff's opinion that the proposed change would provide consistency, as I've said several times now, across the 3 single-family zoning districts. That's all I got.
Okay, any questions, council? Okay, so I've got an ordinance here to amend Article 3, and we do have a public hearing this evening. I'll open that public hearing and ask if there's any comments. Seeing no comments, I'll close the public hearing and ask council for consideration of the ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt an ordinance approving an amendment of the zoning ordinance by revising Appendix A, Article 3, Section 3-6.3, parentheses 1, pertaining to non-conforming uses and structures.
Second.
Okay, motion made and second that we proceed forward with this ordinance. Any final questions or comments of council?
Just one, Gene.
Okay.
I am not particularly familiar with the fire codes, and is this consistent with what other localities and so forth are doing? We're not causing any excessive additional costs to builders and so forth by doing this?
No, we are not. In
Okay.
fact, we're probably lessening costs by virtue of the fact that we're lowering the requirement in RS. As far as the question, is it consistent? This is one of the things that was actually brought forth by our building official, Mr. Somerset, in conjunction with zoning to make this change.
Okay, thank you. I'm just not familiar with the fire codes, and I wanted to make certain that we weren't requiring things that no one else did. Thank you.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Not, Evie, please.
Councilman Hucks.
Aye.
Councilman Southall. Vice Mayor Freeman.
Aye.
Councilman Green.
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews.
Aye.
Councilman Canella.
Aye.
And Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, the second public hearing is an amendment to Appendix A, Section 1, Tac 3 of the zoning ordinance to update the definition of financial institution. Ollie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We recently had a question. It was kind of came from Florida, basically, as to whether we would allow pawn shops or payday loans within the city of Poquoson. We looked in the zoning ordinance and we saw our definition of financial institution, which, is somewhat open to interpretation, as well as some other aspects, but primarily financial institution. I did call this person back and I did explain to him that in the consideration of payday loans and pawn shops, that was not something that was seen as part of our financial institution definition. But this is really an attempt just to put that in writing so that we don't have that situation and it's very easily put to rest. I will point out that, like everything else, you can get a conditional use permit if the city council approves it for a payday loan. I mean, any district, preferably a business one, that people would apply for. So, with all that said, our current definition is retail office of banks, savings and loan offices, and other financial service institutions with or without automatic teller machines providing walk-in service to customers. And then that last sentence, drive-through facilities are separately designated and regulated component. What we would do is we would change that. The retail offices of traditional banks, we know that traditional banks are evolving themselves, but traditional banks, savings and loans offices, and financial service institutions with or without automatic teller machines providing walk-in service to customers. Services include, but are not limited to, accepting deposits, cashing checks, and offering loans, and does not include payday loans, title loans, money lending associated with a pawn shop type establishment and/or similar uses. And then, of course, drive-through facilities are separately designated and regulated component. That is unchanged. Again, this is an attempt to lend greater clarity to the zoning ordinance. The Planning Commission did vote following its public hearing 5-0 to recommend approval to the City Council. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Yeah, go ahead, Randy.
Just wanted to clarify one point. In tightening up this definition and providing the additional clarity, what we're talking about is what is a by right use as
Yes.
opposed to one that would need to go through the conditional use permit process.
Correct.
So the things that are excluded by the updated definition are still possible in Poquoson going through the CUP process. So this doesn't preclude them from coming here. It just creates a separate process that the council is familiar with. Well, we'll consider that particular use in that particular location.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of Wally? If not, thank you, Wally. This is a public hearing on this ordinance change, and I'll open that public hearing at this time. Any speakers? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and ask for consideration by council.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt an ordinance approving an amendment of the zoning ordinance by revising Appendix A, Section 1-3, pertaining to the definition of financial institution.
Okay, motion made and seconded that we proceed forward and make this definition clearer. So, Evie, please.
Certainly. Councilman Green.
Aye.
Councilman Hucks.
Aye.
Councilman Canella.
Aye.
Councilman Southall.
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman.
Aye.
And Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, next item on the agenda this evening is unfinished business. Within here is, even though it's not as great sounding since it's unfinished, it is our time to do the second reading and final adoption of our fiscal year 2020 annual financial plan. I've asked Randy to summarize this evening for those that may not have caught the many work sessions to understand what this says. And then council, I'll come back and give us some instructions on how to go through this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. In attempting to briefly summarize about a 150-page document, for certain there are details that will be left out. But at a high level, the budget before you this evening is for the budget for the upcoming fiscal year, which is July through June of 2020. So it's FY20. The general fund budget, which is the budget in which most things this government does, is slightly less than $30 million. It was presented to you and to the public in work session April the 8th and was the subject of a public hearing April the 22nd. That same evening, prior to the public hearing, there was a joint session with the school board, and following that, a continuing work session on the general city budget. The budget itself, the very high-level components of it, the question that seems to be asked first before the consideration continues, there are no proposed increases to any tax rates in the budget. This budget, as the council knows, is the available money, new money within the budget, was invested in your priorities. You had a retreat in December. You focused on two major priorities over the next 2 fiscal years, with the first being an investment in competitive pay for public employees. And in Poquoson, I'm proud to say that includes all public employees, and we don't draw the distinctions that other communities do between schools and the general government. And the other is support for the continuing efforts to develop the Master Infrastructure Plan, which has as a partner the Constrained Capital Improvements Plan. So you've been making investments where you could over the last 6 months and into next year in support of both of those things. So this budget, as I said, puts the available money towards your number one objective. It includes the full year cost of the compression adjustments that this council made last December. You'll recall that it was sped up. It was done early through the use of a relatively small amount of fund balance. But as we get into the operating budget, we need to supplant a half a year's worth of fund balance with a whole year's worth of ongoing operating revenue. In addition to that, the budget also includes a 2% pay increase for all the city's permanent employees. The budget also includes fully funding the school board's request to you for local funding. That will help the school board, help them mightily, to move forward with a pay package for all the school employees as well this year. So we're making, in partnership with the schools and obviously on the city side, we're making a significant investment in your strategic priority of competitive pay for public employees. Additionally, with the schools, with your support in this budget, they will be able to staff the 2 vestibules that they'll be putting in the high school and the primary school this summer. I did note that there are no tax rate increases proposed. There is a proposed increase in the solid waste fee. However, I'm pleased to say that we were able to mitigate that somewhat by pairing that with a reduction in the sewer fee. The ordinance is in front of you. There are 5. The first is to establish the real estate rates. The second is the personal property rates, which is more than just vehicles. The third speaks to the solid waste increase. The fourth, the sewer fund decrease rates. And lastly, the overall appropriation ordinance. Tanya is here, and between she and Graham and I hope we can answer any questions that you may have.
I'm hoping that we've all studied this enough. The one set of instructions I had for council is that each ordinance will have to be handled separately, as Randy just basically laid out. So despite the fact that we would probably all just like to lay out each one and move forward with one vote, we're going to have to do this separately. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 separate votes to move through this. Are there any questions or comments before we commence? Okay, seeing none, Then let's take the first one. This is an ordinance to lay a levy of $1.15 per 100 assessed values, $1.14, sorry, $1.14 levy per $100 of assessed value on all real estate in the city of Poquoson for the general operation of the various departments of the city government. Everybody prepared to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt an ordinance, you just read the whole thing, but to make it legal, I'm going to say to adopt an ordinance to lay a $1.14 levy per 100 assessed value of all real estate in the city of Poquoson, Virginia for the general operation of the various departments of the city government.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded that we approve that ordinance. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, Evie, please.
Councilman Canella.
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews.
Aye.
Councilman Green.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman.
Aye.
Councilman Southall.
Aye.
Councilman Hucks.
Aye.
Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, the next ordinance dealing with personal property tax.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt an ordinance to lay a $4.15 levy on all personal property, a .00001 cent levy on all watercraft. I said that $0.00001 levy on all watercraft, a $1.50 levy on all privately owned camping trailers and motorhomes, and a $1.14 levy on all vehicles without motive power used or designed to be used as manufactured homes in the city of Poquoson, Virginia for the general operation of the various departments of the city government.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded that we approve this to do the personal property tax rate and rates on mobile homes, campers, and boats and trailers. All right, so Evie, please.
Certainly. Councilman Southall.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman.
No.
Councilman Hucks.
Aye.
Councilman Green.
Aye.
Councilman Canella.
No.
Councilwoman Andrews.
No.
And Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 4-3.
Okay. So with that being said, what I would say to to council is it's hard to balance the budget if you wanted to do something different because you just did not fund the budget. So, or came close to not funding the budget. All right, the next item is an ordinance amending Chapter 66, Article 2, and this deals with solid waste collection charges.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 66, Article 2, Section 66-42, solid waste collection charges, and Article 3, Section 66-63, exemption, eligibility generally, and reduced collection of charges of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Poquoson, Virginia.
Okay, is there a second on this?
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded that we adopt the ordinance dealing with solid waste collection charges and reduce collection charges on sewer. All right, so Evie, please.
Certainly. Vice Mayor Freeman.
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews.
Aye.
Councilman Southall.
Aye.
Councilman Canella.
Aye.
Councilman Hucks.
Aye.
Councilman Green.
Aye.
Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, next item is an ordinance amending Chapter 82, Article 2. This is dealing with the sewer services.
Mayor, I move that we adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 82, Article 2, Section 82-40B, sewer service charges of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Poquoson, Virginia.
Second.
Motion made and seconded that we proceed forward with the ordinance dealing with sewer service. Evie, please.
Councilwoman Andrews.
Aye.
Councilman Canella.
Aye.
Councilman Southall.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman.
Aye.
Councilman Hucks.
Aye.
Councilman Green.
Aye.
And Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, and the final ordinance is to appropriate funds to the various governmental funds for the city of Poquoson.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt an ordinance to appropriate funds to the various governmental funds of the city of Poquoson, Virginia for fiscal year 2020.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded that we approve the ordinance moving the money collected from taxes to these various funds. Evie, please.
Certainly. Councilman Hucks.
Aye.
Councilman Southall.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman.
Aye.
Councilman Green.
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews.
Aye.
Councilman Canella.
Aye.
Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, that's the budget for 2020. Next item on the agenda is a resolution making a nomination for an alternate to the Board of Equalization. Is anybody prepared with that motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt a resolution making a nomination for appointment of an alternate to the Board of Equalization for the city of Poquoson with the name James A. Bales inserted.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. We put Mr. Bales on the Board of Equalization. I don't think we'll have any issues here. Evie, please.
Councilman Green.
Aye.
Councilman Hucks.
Aye.
Councilman Canella. Councilman Southall. Councilwoman Andrews.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman.
Aye.
Mayor Hunt. Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, thank you very much. And comments of the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Two things. Thank you for your work with us on the budget. It really is a year-round thing for us, and we appreciate your guidance and leadership throughout all of it. One other item for the council and also for the community. At your next meeting, we will be having the required public hearing to consider applicants for school board. We will be putting in the paper this week, an advertisement letting folks know that if they have an interest in potentially being considered for school board for either the western or eastern districts, that they can go through the board bank process and/or come up to the public hearing on the 28th. So that's I bring that up because that is a different type of appointment than we typically do. And so in order to be considered for that, they need to have their name placed in consideration during that meeting. So that means we need to hear from them in one way or another. And beyond that, that's all I have, sir.
Okay. Council directives. Councilman Hucks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to go along with what Mr. Wheeler had commented on with citizens that are interested in serving on various boards and committees that we have with the city, I would certainly encourage anybody that's interested to please fill out a board bank application. It's a very simple process in the city manager's office, and we would be happy to consider y'all for these positions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilman Green.
Nothing this evening, sir.
Okay. Councilman Canella.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just as always, thank staff for their work on the budget. They certainly give us an easy job. And then secondly, just thank Delegate Helsel for being here tonight and all he's done for the city of Poquoson, not only in the General Assembly, but during his time here on this council and as mayor. I've said it a lot. I don't think there's anyone who has served his city, state, and country more than he has. And, a lot of people don't know that, but those of us that do can appreciate his leadership and his service. And I love him to death, and I know a lot of people in this city do. And he mentioned I did some work for him in his office in Richmond, and it was a real treat to follow him around that place and see how he works and see him make those relationships and really see how a statesman gets things done. And there's just as many people on the other side of the aisle from his that think the world of him and appreciate him as it is on his own side. And I think that's important. I know we'll miss having him in Richmond, and I know Richmond will miss having him.
Okay. Bud,
Yeah, I'd like to second all the comments made and thank the people here tonight and those at home watching for paying attention to their city government and participating. And I'd also like to commend Mary Martha Catlett for her excellent work in supporting the wounded warriors. Certainly that was a great thing for her to do, and congratulate her on the commendation from the state of Virginia.
Jana?
Nothing additional than I just concur with what everybody else has said.
Okay, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Yes, I'd like to call out Councilman Canella because he earned his bachelor's degree yesterday, and just make it public to say that now we expect a lot more out of you.
Okay. And I think council has covered everything that I was going to say, so it's been a lengthy meeting. I saw a couple of you had to get up and go do things during the meeting, so we obviously held you too long. So with that being said, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Evie, please.
Councilman Canella? Councilwoman Andrews?
Aye.
Councilman Green?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman?
Aye.
Councilman Southall?
Aye.
Councilman Hucks?
Aye.
Mayor Hunt? Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, very well, and we are adjourned.